preliminary components, even though we're scheduled to start right at 7. It always takes me a few minutes to get through. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Grafton Select Board meeting for April 6, 2021. As a preliminary matter, my name is Peter Carlson. I will be the chair of the Grafton Select Board meeting tonight. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on this agenda are present and can hear me. Select Board members, when I please call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Ms. DeFazio.
DeFazio, present.
Mr. Often.
Often present.
Mr. Prisby.
Here.
Ms. Roy.
Roy here.
Peter Carlson is here. And for staff and anticipated speakers on this agenda, when I please call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Matt Malia.
Here.
Ryan Cook.
Here.
David Eisenthal.
Here.
Mary Loria.
Here.
Amy Perkins. Paul Canoyer. Catherine Piscani. Jim Gallagher.
Here.
Bob DeToma. Justin Stone.
Here.
Sean McAvee.
Here.
Daniel Morris.
Here.
Laura Deneen.
Here.
Matali Biswas.
Here.
Did I get that right?
Matali biswas, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Candy LaValle.
Here.
Beth Galloway.
Here.
Dave Robbins.
Here.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Town of Grafton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public body are allowed to encourage to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted to the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature any public comment for any public hearings. For this meeting, the select board is going to be via Zoom, which is posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording and viewed by the public. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website when final minutes are posted, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I, the chair, will note otherwise. Before we turn to our first item of the agenda, and before, please permit me to cover some ground rules so we can have an effective and clear meeting tonight and ensure accurate minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will ask the select board members, inviting each by name or look for raising of hands for any comments or questions or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. And please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If there is any votes that will be taken tonight, they will be done so by roll call. Thank you very much. I just have a few brief announcements. Just a reminder that the brush dump is open during the week from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday through Friday, weather permitting. It will also be open on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. weather permitting. A reminder to everyone that electronics recycling event will be held on Saturday, April 10th at 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at St. Philip's St. Philip's Church at 12 West Street. Due to COVID, the Grafton Garden Club will not be holding their annual plant sale and Grafton Cleanup Day. However, as they did last year, the town will sponsor an abbreviated cleanup day. Bags will be available outside the municipal center in a bin starting Tuesday, April 20th, and it will be available that week. Please do not create teams. Once trash is collected, please contact the Grafton Highway Department to report where bags have been left, and they will pick up for proper disposal. All right, thank you very much. That concludes My announcements, do we have anyone from the public who would want to have any public comment tonight? I'm not seeing anybody. All right, moving on to the first item of the agenda tonight, we have film production. We have 2 people here tonight. Sorry, let me just pull up my names here again. I'm sorry, 1 second. We have Matt Malia and Ryan Cook here tonight. Good evening and welcome.
How you doing?
Hey, everybody. So my name is Ryan Cook. I'm the supervising location manager for the production. Matt's my assistant location manager. For all intents and purposes, is the point person for this production that's requesting to film in Grafton. I'm currently with the production on site. We're filming out in Shelburne Falls, which is why I'm from in an old pool hall. So if I lose signal, Matt will pick up from here. You know, we've had a bunch of meetings with the folks from the town so far. Obviously, this will be our first official request to do some filming. It's a TV show for Showtime Productions. We're working under the name Possible Productions, Inc. You know, since this is a public forum, I'm not going to say the name of the show, although I think it's pretty well out there and you can do some Googling and figure it out pretty well. But it's a pretty high profile show. We're looking at film at a residence in Grafton at 3 Chestnut Street in Grafton. It's one of the main characters of our show. It would be her house. We'd be filming for 5 days on May 17th to the 21st with a week of prep ahead of time, the 5 days of filming, and then a week of wrap and cleaning up after the fact. So 3 sort of total weeks of presence, that 1 week of filming being the biggest impact there. A couple things that we would be requesting to do. I mean, one, we're going to rent out a bunch of parking. We've already made a deal with the Grafton Flea Market. We have met with Parks and Rec and the police chief, and we'd be renting out Norcross Park as well, for of which we'd be making a $2,500 donation to the Parks and Rec department to use that property for the week. In addition to that, we are going to make a $5,000 donation to the public library, sort of a gesture of good faith and goodwill to the community for us coming, being able to do this type of thing. And then, you know, we're obviously in the neighborhood. Matt has reached out to all the neighbors and got them to sign on board with our filming plan and involving them in our production. And a lot of that is renting out driveway space, you know, because they know we're going to close the road down for a lot of different purposes. Our show is also supposed to take place in the winter, so we're putting on fake snow on everybody's lawn. And the biggest piece of that puzzle also being that we're going to be filming late into the night on a couple of different nights, on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as late as 2 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, obviously making accommodations for all of those folks to make sure that they're comfortable with what we want to do. So that's sort of the basic premise of what we want to do. We're really looking forward to filming in Grafton. It'll be my first time filming there. A couple of things that I want to point out, that 2 things is, and we had a meeting last week with a bunch of folks from the town, is that the local aspect, 95% of us on the film crew are local. We really hate the newspaper article that says Hollywood comes to town, because a lot of us live here, and it's a big sort of a local push for us to say we live and work in these communities, which is so we understand when we come there that we're guests there, but we're also from this area too. And then obviously the COVID piece of it is another concern that people everywhere we're going. We're filming in 65 different municipalities in the state of Massachusetts to complete this show, and we're going through pretty rigorous policies and procedures. Not only PPE and separating the crew into different pods and zones, but a lot of our staff is being tested 5 days a week. We test every morning before they can come to work, so they're all tested negative. And that's one pod of us, and then the other pod is tested twice a week. So we're being tested on a pretty regular basis. So providing our own bathrooms, our own dumpsters, our own power, sort of pretty self-sufficient in that regard. So that's sort of the broad strokes of it. If there's, I know we've had a lot of different conversations with a lot of different departments. Feel like everybody feels pretty comfortable with our plan, but if there's any questions or concerns or comment, I'd love to address them tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cook. I do have one question. So this is being filmed primarily at a residence for one of the characters. Is this going to be filmed both indoors and outdoors of that residence?
Primarily indoors, but there are a couple exterior scenes. So I would say if you want to divide the work, it's probably 3/4 indoors, a quarter exterior.
Great, thank you. Does any of the board members have any questions? Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah, along those lines, obviously, I speaking only for myself, it's always fun and exciting when Grafton gets this kind of exposure. When you said 2:00 in the morning, I guess I want a little bit more detail about that. If you're going to be, I assume the filming is going to be indoors at that point, but there's going to be people coming and going from the house. You're going to be loading and unloading equipment. Can you talk to me a little bit about the work that's going to be going on that late and what you're going to do to assuage neighborhood concerns that, people might be disturbed that late at night?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So most of it will be indoors. There will be there's 2 exterior scenes at night, which we're going to be, having some lights and that type of stuff. And that's the difficult part for us is that, we're starting to get into sunset doesn't happen until 8:00, and we need time to film those exterior scenes. And we just can't fake, nighttime. Nighttime is nighttime outside. And so, for me, the phrase that Matt hears me say it a lot, that we have a solution to every problem. My goal right now is to do a lot of neighborhood outreach. I find that communication is the best thing. Community outreach and communication is sort of our #1 asset. So Matt's going to flyer that after we have this neighborhood. Matt's already met with the direct abutters, but we'll also be flyering the neighborhood. And ultimately, generally, if we're going to be impacting people, we typically tend to pay them impact money, inconvenience money. If somebody, listen, I've done movies where, hey, somebody's got like a log exam, like the bar exam in a couple days, and they're studying, and I put them up in a hotel room, or that type of stuff. So if it comes down to it, where ultimately, as the local guy, I want to make sure the film production gets what they want, because that's how we pay our rent. But we want to be able to come film in the community again, and we don't want complaints coming into you folks. So if somebody needs to be put up in a hotel or something like that, or made other accommodations, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that everybody feels comfortable with the situation. We all know that sometimes that there is no way of, there are certain people out there that I get them all the time where they call to complain and they literally say, hey, I know you're the complaint line, so I want to complain, right? But outside of that, we will go to whatever lengths we need to make sure that folks are comfortable with what we want to do. We are going to be parking our big trucks off campus, hopefully at the former DPW yard is what we're hoping to. So limiting the big trucks and just shuttling some of the equipment in so that we're not moving, the big box trucks and the 18-wheelers and all that kind of stuff through the residential neighborhood.
Any other board members have any other questions for Mr. Cook? Mr. Austin?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you're anticipating any kind of traffic concerns and what you're doing to.
Yeah, sure. So our plan that we spoke about with the chief was to basically close that road while we're filming there for just the residents. And, obviously you're going to be letting those residents in and out. And the upper section of the neighborhood has another access road to come in and out. So we would be basically, I guess people use that as a cut through road anyway. So the neighborhood is kind of like, yeah, this is great. We won't have cars flying up and down our road. But, we'll have vans coming, to and from, to our crew parking and that type of thing. We are, part of the reason of renting Norcross Park is to put up a bunch of tents there, a couple big tents so that our crew can walk to lunch, so that we limit van traffic and more stuff versus having to shuttle them to the flea market or something along those lines as well.
That's great. Hopefully drive up some business at some of our local restaurants.
Listen, I know Matt has already been there for a week or 2 weeks and has basically eating there every single day. That is the one thing, and it's not, I try not to be hyperbolic about these types of things, but as we come into the community, we do go to a lot of the local places. To be honest, our show, we've been filming out in the middle of nowhere in the woods for 2 months. So to be back around real restaurants and cafes and shops has been a real delight for our crew. So, there's definitely a big appetite for that type of stuff.
Sounds good.
Any other board members have any questions? Mr. Fazio?
Thank you both. I just have a question about, there's an abutting property that's behind Chestnut Street that belongs to the Grafton Land Trust and has a pretty popular trail behind it. And I just want to know if that would be affected at all or if that's something that should be discussed with the land trust.
Is that, for my edification, is that like basically the top of Chestnut Street?
Yeah, the trailhead, one of the trailheads starts on North Street and it moves up the hill toward Chestnut Street. And then the other trailhead is on Merriam Road, which runs parallel to Chestnut Street. So they're pretty far away from the houses, but it's certainly an abutting property. So I just want to make sure so there's no concerns on your end or on citizens' ends that it is a pretty popular trail in the neighborhood for families to walk.
Looking at it on my map now, I don't expect that to be impacted. Our plan is basically to close Chestnut at North Street at one end and then at Woodside Drive at the other end. And basically to be, between, just in that world and then over at Norcross Park. We won't be seeing a ton of the street, so we won't be really restricting pedestrian traffic because we have to put down fake snow and we can only cover so many people's front lawns with fake snow before we get into a silly place. So we really will be, we'll be on that street, but our filming will be concentrated to the direct proximity to the house, the Hero House, which is, if you look at 3, it's really more towards the bottom, towards North Street.
Great, thank you.
Todd.
So I just wanted to mention one thing that we haven't talked about yet is that so the board's purview here is since we don't have a filming permit, it would be to allow the closure of that public way. But the piece I think we skipped over is we did meet with the chief, and they will be hiring details for both ends of that street and other instances as necessary as the chief and the crew have dictated. So, there will be a local Grafton presence there during those times to help residents get in and out and, turn people away if need be.
Mr. Broussard, I have a question for you, just for procedural purposes. Does the board have to take up a vote to close the street?
So it has been my experience that yes, if you're going to close a public way, you need to vote to authorize that closure. Most of the time that I've been involved in that, the board will say, pursuant to the judgment of the chief of police, so that if something changes or the crew finishes early or whatever, then that's lifted.
Okay, thank you. Does any other board, Ms. Roy?
Would the street need to be closed all 3 weeks or just during the primary days of filming?
It would be the primary days of filming. It would be, my suggestion would be, though, is that we do leave it up to the chief and to the details on scene, that as we are working there, and because that street is not the widest street in the world, and as we are laying down fake snow and we have crews moving in and out, that at intermittent times, based on just safety and knowing, and the chief brought this up, that it is a cut through street that people try to cut through, I guess, around sort of just for a sort of safety measure that we have the ability to do that. It would not be, our plan to do that, but just, to prevent any. The other thing too is, telling the neighbors is that like, we're going to try to keep, I'm sure there will be people that will drive into the neighborhood trying to see what's going on. And if we can limit, that type of additional traffic that might be attracted to our film set, we would want to do that as well.
Does anyone have any other questions? So Evan, do we have to take that vote tonight to close that street as you suggested, or is that something we take up later on?
I think it would be good to vote to allow the closure of Chestnut Street between North Street and, oh man, I just had it. What did you,
Woodland.
Ryan?
Woodside.
Woodside Drive.
Yeah.
Woodside? I was going to say Woodland. I'm getting there. And at the discretion of the chief of police.
So I move the board vote to close Chestnut Street between North Street and Woodside as the police chief sees fit for the purpose of filming.
Second.
All right, I have a motion made and seconded for the closure of Chestnut Street. Do I have any discussion on that motion tonight? All right, seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Mr. Prisby,
Frisbee, aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, I.
and Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried 5-0 for the street closure. Was that all you really needed from us tonight, Mr. Cook?
It is, I think Mr. Gallagher is raising his hand.
I just wanted to let you know, one of the hats I wear is the chairman of the Grafton Cable Oversight Committee. So if you folks need any technical guidance or anything like that, we're there for you.
Okay, great. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
that was facetious.
You never know what request comes my way. All right. I take everything with all sincerity and of the utmost importance.
I guarantee you, Mr. Cook, if you need an XLR cable, you can call the studio and they'll have one up to you in 5 minutes. It's
If I
happening.
need an XLR cable, I'll go to 1995.
All right,
Welcome to Grafton, by the way.
if that's all we have tonight, Mr. Cook, Mr. Belia, we appreciate it. I'm sure we'll see you walking around town. Thank you for coming out tonight and explaining that. We wish you all the luck in a successful filming here in Grafton. And on behalf of the town, thank you very much for being very transparent and working with our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to say thank you, especially from the locals, that, I am very aware of the opportunity we have to do these types of things. And so we consider ourselves lucky to be in the community. And I don't want to bring my wife down there because your community is so beautiful. I'm afraid she's going to want to move there. So I really do appreciate you guys giving us the time.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Okay, next up on our agenda tonight, we have bond items here for us to consider. And tonight we have with us people from our bond council. We have David Eisenthal. In our town here, we have Mary Loria and Amy Perkins here tonight to go over some bond-related items. And I'm going to kick this off to Mr. Broussard first to give us an intro. And then we'll direct the conversation to the appropriate parties.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you've been aware, I've been updating you on our refinancing of certain bonds and going out to borrow for portions of the library. So we've concluded all of that work and went through our bond ratings call with S&P. We were awarded a AA+ stable. And so now the next part is to actually vote to allow that bonding to happen. And so we did provide some documentation. I believe Ms. Roy has to read a very long and technical document into the minutes and for you all to vote. We did take that document and consistent with what I've done in the past, we changed the certification that Ms. Roy has to sign later into motions for you all to vote. And beyond that, I think it's pretty straightforward. Again, we are rebonding some of the older bonds and looking to save, David can correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $735,000. So that's pretty much it. So a lot of unsexy government work, but I think it pays off for people.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Eisenthal, were you trying to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, if you would like me to proceed, I could, or if, I don't know, I'll defer to Mary or to Amy if they have any remarks, but I certainly can fill in a little bit on the borrowings that the town has been engaged in, if with your leave.
Ms. Perkins, Ms. Laurie, did you have anything you wanted to add before Mr. Eisenthal goes forward?
No, that's okay. David could he could help answer those questions, the debt questions,
Okay.
and explain it. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Okay. If with the board's pleasure, I'll have Mr. Eisenthal go forward and go through the document that we're considering tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Broussard said, that you have votes before you to award and execute 2 series of bonds and 1 series of bond anticipation notes. The town took bids on all 3 series last week, March 30th, and settlement is scheduled for April 13th, next Tuesday. The first series of bonds, Series A bonds, has a final par amount of $11,870,000. 20-year repayment, the true interest cost on the issue, approximately 1.75%. This is financing the local share of the library project and the final costs of the DPW project. The town has bond anticipation notes that it issued last year. This portion of the bond issue will pay off those notes next month in May. And in addition to the library and the DPW, the Series A bonds also refunded the remaining bonds that the town issued in 2010 and 2011 to finance the construction of Grafton High School. Now, most of these issues were refinanced in 2017, but there were about $2.5 million worth of bonds left unrefunded from those issues. With this refunding, we're looking at present value savings of about $125,000. These bonds will be called on May 17th. The second series of bonds, the Series B bonds, which I think Mr. Broussard was alluding to, final par amount of $10,260,000 is an advance refunding of the 2012 bonds, which was the final financing for the Grafton High School project. And about 9.8 million of bonds are callable April 1, of 2022. Now, because these are callable more than 90 days after settlement, this is considered to be an advance refunding. And under the tax reform passed by Congress in 2017, advance refundings cannot be tax exempt. They must be issued as taxable bonds. Now, taxable rates have been low enough that a number of municipalities have been looking at taxable advance refundings, and we've been looking at that for Grafton. The town administration set a minimum, especially because waiting, you take the chance if you wait until closer to the call date, it's possible to issue tax exempt refunding bonds. But so there was a minimum of $500,000 present value savings set by the town administration. The town actually realized $736,000 on this refinancing through interest cost about 1.69%. So the combined savings from the refundings of the 2010, 2011, and 2012 bonds was actually about $850,000. And the town will be realizing about $115,000 in debt service reductions in each of fiscal year 22 and 23, about $100,000 in 24, and about $70,000 per year in each of 25 through 32. The final piece of the financing was a renewal of bond anticipation notes. The final par amount on this was $6,915,000. This finances the portion of the library project that is going to be ultimately funded by the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. Grants are expected to come in over the next 5 years or so. These notes will be renewed annually with principal paydowns as grants are received or as required by state law. The net interest cost on this band renewal was 0.216%. I'll talk a little bit about the bond rating. Mr. Broussard talked about that. The town applied for both a bond and a note rating from S&P Global Ratings. Members of the town administration spoke with S&P analysts on March 16th, received ratings on March 24th. The town has had a AA+ rating on long-term debt for a number of years. S&P did affirm this rating. The town was also assigned an SP1+ rating on the notes, which was the same rating as last year's bands. That's the highest short-term rating that S&P assigns. And I'll just comment that S&P considers Grafton to be a strong credit. They do see areas that could push Grafton towards an even higher rating, being more growth in the tax base and economics of the town and increases in financial reserves. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions that the members might have.
Thank you, Mr. Eisenthal. I'll open it up to any of the board members who may have questions. I have one question, Mr. Eisenthal. Can you go back to the library note for one moment and just explain that one more time? A lot of people I know in Grafton don't understand, how the grant process works, but just could you walk us through, like, as we're restructuring that last part there for the library building, we have to bond the entire project, correct? And then as we get the grant amounts in over the next few years, you're able to pay down a large amount of that principal to then get to that, that ratio that we went with the town meeting, like, we get 52% reimbursement on the project, or give or take a few percentage points.
Right. Well, the town finance, has already borrowed the entire cost of the project, and the town is expecting to ultimately receive about $7.4 million from MBLC. And the town's already received about 460,000 of that. And the expectation is that over the next few years, the MBLC will make payments of the grants, and as the town receives those, the town will be able to pay down principal on these notes. That the 6.9 million currently, the town will be able to make payments. The town will also need to make payments under state law considerations beginning in fiscal year 23, regardless of receipt of the grants, but it won't be as large a sum, but that's something that the town will need to budget starting in fiscal year 23.
Okay. Appreciate it. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so tonight you need us to read some very lengthy motions tonight, Mr. Eisenthal, is that correct?
Yeah, and maybe I should clarify, I am the municipal advisor. Bond counsel, which is Locke Lord of Boston, drafted the lengthy votes that you see before you that will carry the financings into effect.
Okay, and is this going to be one long motion, or do we take each one independently?
I think Mr. Broussard had a conversation or an exchange with bond counsel on that.
Yeah, you can do it either way. You can either take it in chunks or just do the whole thing. It'll just be I moved and I further moved, blah, 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 all the way down, and then just vote it all at the end. That would be my recommendation.
Ms. Roy, are you?
Let's do this.
All right.
I move the board vote that in order to reduce interest costs, the treasurer is authorized to issue refunding bonds at one time or from time to time pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 21A of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority to refund a portion of the town's 10,500,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2011 bonds dated April 1st, 2011, maturing on April 1st in the years 2022 through 2024 inclusive. 2, 9,100,000 general obligation school bonds dated May 1st, 2010, maturing on February 1st in the years of 2022 and 2023 inclusive. And 3, 16,650,000 general obligation school bonds dated April 1st, 2012, maturing on April 1st in the years 2023 through 2032 inclusive, collectively the refunded bonds. And that the proceeds of any refunding bonds issued pursuant to this vote shall be issued to pay the principal, redemption premium, and interest on the refunded bonds and cost of issuance of the refunding bonds. And further vote that the sale of the 11,870,000 general obligation municipal purpose loan of 2021 bond series A, tax exempt, and the town dated April 13th, 2021, the Series A bond to Robert W. Bard Co. Incorporated at the price of $12,737,598.43, and accrued interest, if any, is hereby approved and confirmed. The Series A bond shall be payable on April 1st of the years and in the principal amounts, and bear interest with the respective rates as follows. Year amount interest rate, 2022, 1,250,000, 5%, 2023, 1,300,000, 5%, 2024, 890,000, 5%, 2025, 365,000, 5%, 2026, 390,000, 5%, 2027, 405,000, 5%, 2028, 425,000, 5%, 2029, 445,000, 5%, 2030, 470,000, 3%, 2031, 485,000, 3%, 2032, 500,000, 2%, 2033, 505,000, 2%, 2034, 515,000, 2%, 2035, 525,000, 2%, 2036, 540,000, 2%, 2037, 550,000, 2%, 2039, 1,130,000, 2%, and 2041, 1,180,000, 2%. And further vote that the bonds maturing on April 1st, 2039 and April 1st, 2041, each a term bond, shall be a mandatory redemption or mature as follows. Term bond due April 1st, 2039, year and amount 2038, 560,000, 2039, 570,000. Term bond due April 1st, 2041, year and amount 2040, 585,000, 2041, 595,000. And further vote that the sales of and further vote that the sales of 10,260,000 general obligation refunded bonds Series B, interest subject to federal and Massachusetts taxation of the town dated April 13th, 2021, and the Series B bond, and together with Series A bonds, the bonds, to Stifel, Nicholas & Co. Incorporated at the price of $10,225,238.63, and accrued interest, if any, is hereby approved and confirmed. The Series B bond shall be payable on April 1st of the years and in the principal amount, and bear interest at the respective rates as follows. Year amount and interest rate: 2022, 125,000 at 1%, 2023, 960,000 at 1%, 2024, 965,000 at 1%, 2025, 980,000 at 1%, 2026, 990,000 at 1%, 2027, 1 million at 1.25%, 2028, 1,010,000 at 1.75%, 2029, 1,030,000 at 1.75%, 2030 at 1,050,000 at 1.75%, 2031, 1,065,000 at 2%, and 2032 at 1,085,000 and 2.05%. And further to vote approved sale of 6,955,000 1% general obligation bond anticipation notes of the town dated April 13th, 2021 and payable April 13th, 2022, the note, to Piper Sandler & Co. at the par and accrued interest, if any, plus a premium of $54,213.60. And further vote that in connection with the marketing and sales of the bonds and the note, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sales and preliminary official statement dated March 23rd, 2021, and the final official statement dated March 30th, 2021, the official statement, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted. And further vote that the Series B bond shall be subject to redemption at the option of the town upon such terms and conditions as are set forth in the official statement. And further vote to authorize the execution and delivery of the refunding escrow agreement with respect to the Series B bond to be dated April 13th, 2021 between the town and the U.S. Bank National Association as refunding escrow agent. And further vote that the town treasurer and select board be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver the continuing and significant events disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C2-12 in such forms as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertakings shall be incorporated by reference in the bonds notes as applicable for the benefits of the holders of the bonds and notes from time to time. And further vote that we authorize and direct the town treasurer to establish post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures and continuing disclosure procedures in such form as the town treasurer and bond counsel deem sufficient, or if such procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to monitor and maintain the tax exempt status of the bonds and notes to comply with relevant securities laws. And further vote that any certificates or documents relating to the bonds and notes, collectively the documents, may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original and all of which shall be constitute one and the same document. Delivery of an executed counterpart or signature page to a document by electronic mail in a PDF file or by other electronic transmission shall be as effective as delivery of a manual executed counterpart signature page to such document. And electronic signatures on any of the documents shall be deemed original signatures for the purposes of the documents and all matters relating thereto having the same legal effect as original signatures. And further vote that each member of the select board and town clerk and the town treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of foregoing votes. Was I on mute?
All right.
Do you need a second,
I
Mr.
need a
Chair?
second for that, please, and don't ask her to read that again. All
I
right.
will second that lengthy motion.
Colleen, I've had to do that before too. Great job. I have a motion made and seconded for the proposed motion for bonding. Is there any questions on the motion tonight? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Austin, aye.
Mr. Prisby,
Aye.
Roy,
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. Declare the motion carried. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so I think that's it for bonding. I just want to thank David Eisenthal for joining us and for all his hard work on this, and Mary Loria and Amy Perkins and Mary Oliver for their work on this. This started about 2 weeks before I got hired, and just culminated now. So it was a lot of work, but I think it's good work. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eisenthal, Ms. Loria, Ms. Perkins. Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Main Street project update here. I have Mr. Canoyer here from DPW, as well as Mr. Broussard here.
All right, so as part of our requirements, I'm required to give you guys periodic updates of major milestones for the project. So we last spoke in February. It was a night we accepted the easements from people. So since that meeting, the plans for the project have been recorded. Property affidavits were sent to Mass DOT for the easements. Letters have been sent to all the affected property owners, informing them of the award and the expected date of the award. Checks were mailed to the residents, getting the checks to the easements on March 25th, as scheduled, and the schedule we developed with MassDOT back in September. So we made our mark, which was the goal. So the next steps of the project actually was advertised in the Boston Globe on Saturday and is also on the Combis website. The bidding process hasn't started yet, but the advertisement is out. The expected date for bids to open is May 25th of this year. That date obviously is subject to change depending on if some questions come in during the advertisement period. MassDOT, it coordinates all those functions. Our role is largely just being the host community at this point and taking the resident complaints and issues and addressing those. Should be noted to everybody that Eversource and Verizon and National Grid have a lot of work to do on that road for utility relocations and Eversource putting new gas lines in. So some of that work is actually going to start. We're supposed to start this week. Eversource was supposed to be out there placing some gas services. That probably was delayed a little bit, but Eversource will be out there for most of the summer, and I wouldn't be surprised if National Grid starts to move some of their infrastructure as well, because they have a lot of poles to be relocated. And I just, I'll say it here, and then if people do, reach out to you guys, just get get to me and we'll address it with National Grid. People need to remember that the easements that they signed up for or took the money for or granted include the relocation of telephone poles and guy wires. And part of the easements also is an aerial trespass, which is the wires going over their property. So when that starts to happen, if they have any question about where it's being put, they should contact, they can contact me immediately, or, Cindy and Joanna have been great at wrangling those people and getting them to the right place. So, and to follow up just with what Evan said about the bonding stuff, in September, MassDOT was concerned we wouldn't meet the date of March 25th and getting the payment to the residents. And we did. And it was a team effort. The assessor's office with their research and getting us the labels and the envelopes. Mary Lauria and Tina getting, in accounting, getting the checks to people and setting up accounts for those 140 residents in a short period of time. The sewer department staff stuffed all the envelopes and did all the mailings. Brian Zerko, answering the, people's questions and meeting people on site. And really Chris Karen, who's a DPW administrator, I don't know if anybody knows him, but he did yeoman's work getting this done. Every letter had to be signed. You couldn't just print one and run off 135 of them. Evan can attest to that. We had to physically sign everything, and some of them twice, because they wouldn't take copies. And Chris did all that work, kept owner's property contact logs. He did a great job. So that's it. So hopefully bids opened up, contract awarded. There'll be a shovel in the ground, hopefully, in the fall of this year. And it's a 2-year construction period, two construction seasons. So depending on the winter, there may not be a lot of work happening in the fall. But expected completion is, the fall of 2023. So it'll be some time, but it'll be really nice when it's done. And I would just ask all of you, if any residents do reach out to you, please get a hold of myself, Brian, and we will get their issues addressed. So that's that.
Thank you, Mr. Knoyer. Does any of the board members have any questions about the Main Street project? Ms. Roy.
Do you have any other outreach meetings that you have to hold, or are you all done with those?
No, we are done with those. We met the dates for those. Those were, they started in 2017. So no, that's it. I will tell you that sidewalk grant for the Millbury Street School is actually part of this. The Safe Routes to School is a federal program. So we'll be doing this exercise again, because my contact at MassDOT for this told me that's her next thing for us. So we'll be, at least we know how to do it now.
That's exciting. Any other questions for Mr. Knoyer on the Main Street project? Paul, I think it goes without saying, I know you had some, help and heavy lifting back in the summer, but with some staffing changes in town hall, this project lead, and I know this was a team effort by everyone in town hall, fell in your lap amongst all the other responsibilities that you've done. And I think it's important that this board and the community recognizes the amount of work that you've done, and this is in your character and your nature, but it doesn't go unnoticed. And I want to express, actually, we should be expressing our appreciation and gratitude for you taking this project. I know with a lot of disruption with COVID, it didn't make anything any easier. In seeing this to fruition, the town is truly indebted to you taking that project over and getting it to this point. Thank you very much for that update, but I just want to make sure we all know you as well were an integral part in ensuring that this gets to this point.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have J.H. Lynch paving contract extension. And Ms. Roy?
I take it back.
Oh, okay. So next up, we have the J.H. Lynch paving contract extension for consideration tonight. Mr. Knoyer, did you want to give us an update on that?
So this is we had the option in the original contract to extend the contract for up to 3 years. This would be their 3rd year working for us with the same, The only difference in pricing would be the liquid asphalt, which is, you know, out of their control and out of our control as well. They've been great to work with as far as Brian and I are concerned, very responsive to us in the community, and their work has been great. So we would recommend a third year with them for sure.
Any questions before I entertain a motion? I'm seeing none. Ms. Roy, did you want to read a motion for us?
I move the board vote to approve the 1-year amendment to the contract with J.H. Lynch and Sons Incorporated, extended the completion date to April 30th, 2022.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often.
Often aye.
Mr. Frisbee.
Aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. Declare the motion carried. And last, let's see here. Just looking, get into the next part here. So next up here, we have the street. I think we're all set. Oh, no, Mr. Canora, hold on one second. So next up on the agenda here, we have the street beautification project for Christopher Drive. So tonight we have a resident of Christopher Drive, Ms. Piscani. Good evening, Ms. Piscani. I know you've communicated to the board over the past several weeks. Thank you for your patience and welcome to tonight's meeting. I'd like to just give you the floor and just give a brief update as to what you're asking the board to consider tonight. And we have Mr. Canora here, who is the town's tree warden, to answer any questions, as well as Mr. Broussard.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. My husband and I live at 4 Christopher Drive, and we've been there for 6 years now. We love being in Grafton. And we wanted to plant some trees across the street from us on Christopher Drive. They would be between number 2 and number 4 Christopher Drive on the opposite side of the street, which is currently town-owned property. It's a strip of town-owned property there. And it would be part of a beautification process, because right now it's very visually unappealing right now. There used to be some like brush and other items that kind of create a nice barrier. But a few years ago, somebody went in with and destroyed all of that. So it's just very unattractive. So our plan was to plant some trees to fill up that space and make it look nice when you drive up, and also because we see it every single day. I spoke to the tree warden, and he had suggested blue spruce or eastern red cedar. He was, I think Paul can speak, but he said he was in favor of it. I've talked to the neighbor that lives in the house. You can see in the, I emailed over pictures. The house is on Pleasant Street, but you can see in the pictures I sent over. The neighbors thought it was a great idea. Yeah, thank you. Right, so that's looking from our driveway across the street, and that white line indicates the area that we want to plant some trees. I don't have a specific number of trees. It just depends on how many are needed to fill in that spot. And the other one, the other trees that we're looking at is arborvitae. Yeah, and that's looking down Christopher Drive. And you can see it doesn't interfere anywhere near where the Pleasant Street entrance is. It won't be blocking any lines of sight or anything like that. Yeah, so that's our plan, and we're hoping to get your permission.
Thank you, Ms. Piscani. Does the board have any questions tonight? What's in front of us? Ms. Roy, then Mr. Fazio.
So what exactly are you looking to donate? Just the trees or all of the labor that's involved?
Yeah, well, look, we will purchase the trees and we will have them planted. So we're not looking for any financial support from the town. We were just looking for permission before we went ahead and did it.
And does any of the area need to be cleared out before you add the trees at all?
I don't believe so. There is a space of grass there. So it looks like there should be enough space to plant them where there is open space right now. The area that was like killed off is like further back.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes, thank you. I know that you reached out to the abutters on Pleasant Street. I was just curious about, and it's hard to tell really on that map where 2 and 4 Christopher Drive are, but have you spoken to those neighbors as well, just to make sure that everyone in the area is in agreement when these trees?
I haven't yet, but I will email them. So I will talk to them. So.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just think it would be a good idea because I'd hate for you to waste the time and money putting these in to have someone then complain about it for some reason. So I would definitely just check
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on the board? I have one question. So when I was looking at the image, if you don't mind, I want to pull back the shared image here just to ask this question. So in looking at the tree line that's currently along the property here, along the town line, is this going to be in the same line as those trees that we're seeing there? Those
Yes, I think the land looks like it dips down kind of there. So I think it would be like, yeah, so you see so we were thinking a little bit closer to the street, but not obviously as close as those bushes are right now. So kind of like in between.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions on the board? Ms. Roy?
So my question is more for Mr. Canoyer. It looks like there's a nice line of trees that exists there already. Is there a reason that that area was left clear or cleared out like she mentioned?
The white pines that were there, weren't planted. They were just they grew back there, the developer, when he built the neighborhood. Some of them went down, but those just naturally grew in that column because somebody mows that. So that's the reason those are growing up. As far as who cut all the brush down, I do not know.
There was a neighbor that resides further up the street who some years ago went and took it upon himself to go and do whatever he did there to destroy all that brush and other stuff that was there. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Biscotti. Any other questions from the board tonight on the request that she's proposing, Ms. Roy?
Is there any indication that that same neighbor won't destroy your trees you're looking to plant?
I don't see why. I think it'd be a very cruel thing to do, is destroy freshly planted trees, right? Yeah, I don't know about that. So
at that point, they would be on town property, so at least we'd have some recourse on the town side if that did happen.
right.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Any other questions from the board? Mr. Often?
Yeah, I guess I'm just interested in, so these would go onto town property. And Mr. Canoyer, we're talking any long-term maintenance? Do you have any concerns with the abutter that's across the street where, the trees would be between the curb and their properties?
Well, there's definitely enough space there, with the 3 trees that we've discussed. The arborvitaes, I just shy away from just because the deer really love them when there's nothing else to eat. The blue spruce and the cedar, while they get, their mature height is 40 to 50 feet. It takes, 30 to 40 years, and they probably get, 20 feet wide at the base. So as long as, if they bring them back from the road, like she said, right at the edge of the grass line, there's plenty of room on each side for those to fill in.
Got it. Okay.
All right, any other questions from the board? Ms. Roy?
Can we just hold off on taking a motion until she checks with the other 2 abutting neighbors to make sure everybody's
Yeah, so I did speak, as I said, with the neighbor that's on Pleasant Street, whose house, you can see that house in the pictures. That's the one would be the most affected. And as I said, he's on board. And then number 2, I will speak to. I mean, number 2 is, kind of a little bit further away, but, I'm happy to speak to them too. We are getting near, planting season is starting soon. So we do kind of want to also kind of get a move on things. So.
Any other questions on the board? Mr. Often?
I'd also like to hold off, just, we don't have to, we presumably could move pretty quickly on this, but I would like to see a couple of letters of support from 2 Christopher, which is on the corner there with Pleasant Street and then the Pleasant Street neighbor. Other than that, I don't have any concerns.
Okay.
Okay, do you need a letter or do you just need an email would be sufficient?
1 second, Ms. McConney. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I just have a piece of information.
Okay.
Mr. Knoyer, to receive those letters officially is something I think it should come through the town and through us, or should it come through the requester who's requesting to do this on town property? How would you like to see this facilitated?
I mean, through the request is fine. It works for me. I think that's the best way. She's the neighbor. You know, it's the.
All right. Okay, Ms. Piscani, I'm sorry to cut you off like that. I'm trying to control the meeting a little bit, but thank you for your indulgence. Did you want to follow up with a comment?
Yeah, no, I just was asking, would an email be sufficient or do you need something, else?
Mr. Knoyer, is there a preference, email or a letter, something signed?
I mean, email's fine. You know, it's in this day and age. I think that that is a legal document the way the town works.
Okay, great. Any other questions or concerns from the board? We can table this for Ms. Piscani to come back to us at our next business meeting, which would be on the 20th. Is that fine with everybody? And we can get that clarification.
That plenty of time for planting season, Ms. Piscani?
Okay.
I mean, if I just don't want us to be overthinking it. You know, we're talking about planting trees in a town full of trees, but you know, if that's fine with the growth season, then if it's fine with Ms. Piscani, then okay.
Sorry, I missed that. What was that? Planting trees in a town full of trees?
Yeah, you had mentioned that there was a season that
Well,
this
you either plant in spring or fall, right? It's like there's a limited window for when you plant trees.
okay, so is the 20th okay if we delay
That's
this
fine.
2 weeks?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, we'll bring this back on the 20th, Ms. Piscani. If you want to secure that other additional information from the board's requesting, I think that's fine. I think that's reasonable. And if you can get those to the town, we can include that in our packet on the 20th, and we can bring you back to the meeting, and then we can take further action then. Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. You guys have a good night.
You too.
All right, bye.
Good night. Next up here, Mr. Kennard, I think we're all set, unless there's anything else on the agenda that you have to be on, but thanks for coming out. Okay.
Good night.
Good night. Next up, we have the Board of Trustees of Soldier Memorials. Before we go down here real quick, it was asked by me to put this on our agenda to look at increasing the membership to assist with quorum. During COVID, it's been very difficult for the trustees of the Soldiers Memorials to be meeting. We thought that adding, additional members would alleviate this, but Mr. Broussard tonight would like to address this with the board tonight before we take any further conversation, just so you know how this came about and why. And Mr. Broussard, if I want to hand this over to you, if you would like to inform the board of some of your discovery that you have come across as late as this afternoon, right?
Yeah, so I did some research into the enabling authority behind the trustees, and it's actually Mass General Law Chapter 41, Section 105. And in that section, it clearly states that the committee shall be made up of the chair of the Board of Selectmen, 3 veterans, and 2 non-veterans. So the statute does not permit you to change the size of the committee at all. So you'd have to remain where you are.
I did not know that the chair of the select board was automatically appointed to that committee, but that's interesting. Okay, apparently I should have been attending some meetings on behalf of the board, and I apologize for not knowing or doing so. But tonight we do have Mr. Gallagher here with us, Mr. DeToma, and Mr. McAvey to discuss this. Given the recent situation here tonight, increasing the membership obviously I don't think is something that it's possible that the board can legally take up tonight. But I wanted to just have this discussion with us. We have this on the agenda. You guys have come out here tonight. I'd like to open it up to the 3 of you to either, have a discussion with us or, ask some questions of the board or Mr. Broussard while you're here. Mr. DeToma?
Good evening, everybody. Having been recently appointed to this this Board of Trustees and having a conversation with current member, Mr. Drago, and having a conversation with Veterans Agent Justin Souza, we quickly realized that he wasn't going to get a lot of support from the Board of Trustees. They were having trouble acquiring a quorum to get anything done, and that's how the decision was made to approach the board and try to increase the size of the committee. Some of the members were dealing with health issues or COVID fear, and so a quorum was difficult. Zoom was out of the question for some of the members. So I reached out to Mr. Gallagher and Mr. McCavey to see if they were interested, and then miraculously, I believe it's Mr. Stone, also threw his hat into the ring. There he is. Yep, he threw his hat into the ring too. So, so Justin is in need of support from the members of the board, and I'm just as surprised to hear that the chairman of the select board is now on board. So I just recently got a copy of the charge from Candy LaValle today. So I'm not quite sure where we go from here.
Understood. Any other members here, Sean or Justin or Jim, do you have anything you want to add?
So how many vacancies are there now, Bob?
The only current vacancy that I'm aware of is the former chairman, Andy Kelberg.
And the members that are already on the board, they just haven't had a, I don't know how to say this nicely, but they just don't want to be doing that or anymore. Maybe should they be asked if this is something that still interests them?
To my knowledge, the desire to participate is still there. I believe Zoom is out of the question for two of the members, and when the other two members were approached and asked if they were hoping to stay on board, they took it in the worst possible way and thought that they were being rejected or ejected from the committee. So there were some hurt feelings, which we've had to kind of smooth over.
They were holding that against you, right?
Absolutely. It was all my fault. And, thank you once again, Jim, for your support.
So if I may ask, just so I'm understanding this, so currently right now, how many members are on that Board of Trustees? 5?
It's a 5-person board, and currently it's myself, Mr. Drago, Mr. Cutler, Mr. Callahan.
Okay. And apparently the chair of the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, sorry.
As of now.
Well, Peter, given that fact, that may be something you may want to consider with all of the other things on your plate. Consider sending a proxy in your place.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that with Mr. Broussard to see if that is something we can send. I know we've done that before, Mr. Gallagher, where we've sent a select board representative, we've appointed somebody. Let me just double check that we can do that. If there's some legal reason why the chair of the select board needs to be on there, I just want to make sure we dot our I's and cross our T's. Ms. Roy?
So is there even really a vacancy now that we've found that out? Because I've just heard 5 people listed.
Yeah, I would agree that I think the way that this has gone on, we would have to do some research as to, did the board many years ago appoint a representative from the Board of Select Board to serve in lieu of the chair of the select board? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know if Mr. Detoma might know a little bit more. I think he would have probably included that, I would think. Mr. Robbins, did you have your hand up? Oh, sorry. So, I mean, I'm fine with appointing, someone to represent us if that's the board's wish. I also would have no problem. I would be actually honored to serve the trustees, and I'm sure future select board chairs may as well, but I can't speak for them. But let's look into that, Mr. Gallagher, and we can get back to the trustees. And if we move forward with that, then we'll open it up to a select board representative. Mr. DeToma?
Yeah, Justin has some projects that he definitely needs our support for. And Mr. Drago, who came to visit me this afternoon, he is hot to trot. He's hoping that we can get to some resolution to this as quickly as possible. So I'm sure he'll be a little disappointed when we tell him tomorrow that this dilemma kind of popped up out of nowhere.
Well, I mean, you've got another member here per the law. So if we need to post a meeting and there's business that needs to be conducted just to make a quorum, then let's continue until we go down this path and determine if we can have a representative. I think that would be a reasonable approach. I think it'll take us a little bit of time just to double check that.
Yeah, I think Justin works tomorrow. Is that correct, Evan? Do you know? Is Wednesday his day in town hall?
Who's Justin?
The veterans agent.
No, I'm just kidding. I was just kidding.
For a minute there, I'm going to say something right now. For a minute there, I was going to be like, Mr. Broussard, I want you to meet Mr. Stone, our veterans agent. Mr. Stone, this is Mr. Broussard. I might have overlooked an introduction. It's possible.
No, I believe so, Mr. DeToma.
All right, I'll stop in and talk to Evan tomorrow, and maybe we can wrangle Justin into it too, and figure out how to solve this and get a meeting scheduled so that we can help them out.
Mr. Stone, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I'm actually not the veterans rep. I was actually applying for one of the trustee positions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And that's how I received this. So
I'm sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
My bad. Okay. Wow, committed a chairman faux pas here tonight. That won't there'll be many more, I'm sure. It's a long night. Mr. McAvee? McAvee.
Thank you. I understand we'll call it the sensitivity of uninviting someone to a committee. I guess I would defer to someone who's more knowledgeable about appointments, but if the persons or people that cannot attend these meetings, especially given our COVID situation, have been appointed, can they be unappointed by town administrator or moderator, whoever that might be? And again, I'm sensitive to the fact that we're probably dealing with some older veterans or older persons, and we don't want to ruffle feathers. However, it is what it is. And if we have projects that need to be done, I guess, summertime is the only time we really have to do these things because they're outside.
Understood. All right. Ms. Roy?
Do we know if any of these seats have terms on them? Like, is anybody up for reappointment in, say, June that we might be able to reevaluate and advertise for an open position?
Mr. DeToma?
I was looking at the town website just this morning, and yes, there are appointments. They're separated by a couple of years. Don't ask me what year is what, but yeah, that's the short answer.
Okay. Sean, 1 minute. Mr. Fazio?
Does anyone know when the last time the trustees have met? Was it
Also a question no one has an answer for.
Okay.
Okay. Sean?
I believe a couple of the appointments or a couple of the members, it's June 21.
Yep.
And then the other two would be 2023.
All right, we could take a look at that. Okay. I think those are good points that you brought up tonight. We'll research that internally. I know we're going to be having a workshop soon, and one of the agenda items board member wanted to discuss was appointment process by the select board and just going about that. So we'll be discussing that actually next week before, so I'm sure in the generality, it will be brought into that discussion. We won't talk about this one committee in particular. But so in the meantime, if you need to post a meeting, Mr. Detoma, and we need to move some things along, and if I can help make a quorum, then, I would encourage we do so. In the meantime, we'll research if we can appoint a rep for this committee by the select board if it wishes to do so going forward.
Yeah, that'd be great because the first order of business is to appoint a chairman of the board. So.
Okay. All right. Mr. Fazio?
Do we have to vote to have you, Mr. Chair, be part of this committee?
No, I think the statute declares that the chair is to serve on the committee, so I think it comes with the job.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or concerns from the board? Mr. Stone?
So I applied for an opening on the trustees, the veteran trustees board, and that's how I got the invite to this. And so now I'm just curious, do I just stand by? Was that I was brought in to be voted onto the board? I'm just a little confused on what just happened. Sorry.
Sure. So, Mr. Stone, in short, right now, the board is fully appointed per, what Mr. Broussard had mentioned. You can only have so many members on there and the chairs on there. So we have members that are currently been appointed. In order for a vacancy to occur, one of the other 4 members would either have to resign or, wait for their term to expire for reappointment for, vacancy to get in there. So right now, there are no vacancies, but I will say this, just stand by. If we can appoint a select board representative, personally, I would like to see an actual veteran of our armed services to be serving on the committee, although I would be honored to do so. I don't hold that honor of being a veteran. So that's how I personally feel. I don't know how other select board members may feel. Future chairs going down the line, they may become a veteran. They may want to serve in that capacity. So we have to work out those logistics and just make sure that we are following the appropriate guidelines that we're given. So if you just want to stand by, let us research this a little bit. We'll reach out if we can have a representative, and if we choose to do so, then I think we've got 3 volunteers here tonight that I think would be perfect. So if that works for you, for Sean and for Jim, we'll get back to all of you as soon as we can sort all this out.
Sounds good. Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome. That's a great question though, but thank you for asking. Any other questions from the board? Okay, so Mr. Toma, we'll reconvene over the next couple of days. We can take this offline from here and we can figure out our next steps.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. Sean, Jim, Justin, thank you very much for coming in tonight. Just be a little bit more patient and let us sort this out. Thank you.
Peter, before I leave, can I just the last few years, just personally, thank Ed Prisby for his work on the board and the Affordable Housing Trust and all the things that he does. It's been appreciated, it's noticed, and we appreciate it. I know I do. So thanks,
Jim. Appreciate it.
All right, and you'll mail me that $5?
I left it under the rock in front of your porch.
All right. Thank you. All right, take care, folks.
Thanks, Jim. Stay safe. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, we don't have any resignations tonight, so we do have a few appointments here tonight. In front of us, we have a Zoning Board of Appeals appointment. Do I have a motion?
I move the board vote to appoint Matali Biswas to the Zoning Board of Appeals as an alternate member with a term to expire June 30th, 2022.
Second.
Motion made and seconded for the appointment. Any discussion on the appointment? I want to just have, Matali, do you want to introduce yourself? I would just want to say, we appreciate you wanting to step up and volunteer in this capacity. You want to just tell the board a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Matali Biswas. I am pretty much a Massachusetts native. I grew up in Northborough, and I have recently settled in Grafton with my family, maybe 2015. And I'm a commercial real estate attorney. I work in Boston. I my practice covers pretty much everything real estate. I do acquisitions, I do leasing work, litigation, and zoning and permitting work. And it's that zoning and permitting work that makes me interested in becoming a member of the board. I have experience reviewing zoning bylaws, implementing them in my projects for my clients, being before boards to advocate for those projects. And I'm really interested in being on the other side now from the board's perspective. I actually was on behind the scenes on the gas station in Grafton that was before the board a couple of years ago. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Matali. Does the board have any questions before we take a vote or any discussion? Mr. Prisby?
I just want to say welcome aboard from one busy attorney to another. It's a handful. It's a handful in this town, and land use certainly isn't easy. So congratulations and thank you for volunteering.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Is there any other questions or discussion from the board? If not, I can take a vote. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often.
Often aye.
Frisbee.
Frisbee, aye.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much, Matali, for coming in. We appreciate your volunteerism and good luck.
Thank you. Can I just ask a quick question? What's going to be the next?
So you should receive a letter from the appointment from us, and then you'll go to, and set an appointment up or go into the town clerk's office to be sworn in once you have the letter. Ms. LaValle will take that letter, enter it into the record. You'll take an oath that you'll uphold the local laws and the Commonwealth. And at the end of the day, you're just going to be human. That's what it comes down to. And then, you know, you can then start attending the meetings as a member.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Up tonight here, we have another appointment. Actually, did I miss one? Ms. Deneen here is here for the Disability Commission. Ms. Deneen sent her interest in the other week to the town through our web portal and sent an email directly. Laura, good evening. Thank you very much for being patient tonight. We had a full plate here. Sorry you had to go and listen through all of the bonding stuff and the projects, but we appreciate your patience. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to serve on the Disability Commission?
Sure. Thanks for the time tonight. I had no problem sitting through everything. It's actually semi-interesting to see what's going on. I've been in Grafton for about 20 years. I come from Westboro and Framingham before that. I've been in Grafton and working within special ed in Grafton for almost all of the 20 years that I've been in town. I have served as the SPED chair for 3 years. I've been on other appointments regarding superintendent searches and principal searches and all of that really important pieces that happen here in Grafton. When I saw this come up, I actually was really interested in it because I'd gotten away a lot from the special ed community in a way of really hard advocating, more in lines of keeping track, et cetera. My children are older, so it wasn't on the forefront every day for me anymore. I see this as a chance to bring forth some of my education in this area and really serve the people of Grafton, really bringing back in some of that disability pieces that I haven't been in daily anymore. I do work full time. Lately it's been from home. I also work in the financial and procurement area, as well as the legal area at Citizens Bank in Rhode Island. So this appointment would be a nice kind of me going back to my roots. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Does the board have any questions or comments? So I just want to say, support here for Ms. Deneen tonight for the commission. I've known Laura for many, many years. She's a staunch advocate for for children and now adults with disabilities. And I know she would be a great asset to the committee as well. And I just want to thank you for stepping up and volunteering and serving our community again in this capacity. If there isn't any other questions or comments from the board, I can go and take a motion.
I move the board vote to appoint Laura Deneen to the Disability Commission for a term set to expire on June 30th, 2022.
Motion made second. Any discussion on the motion of appointment? Seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. I declare the motion carried. Laura, thank you very much for coming out tonight and waiting to this part. We appreciate your wanting to volunteer, and we wish you the best of luck, and let us know how this board can help out the Disability Commission.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
You too.
All right. Next up, we have appointment for Cultural Council.
Yeah, I think that's me.
Good evening, Mr. Morris. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I see here. Welcome. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've been in Grafton, South Grafton now for about 2.5 years. My family moved here from South Boston. I am the director of theater at Dana Hall School in Wellesley, which is an all-girls school, international boarding school, and worked at the Huntington Theater for about 8 seasons and ran a theater company in Boston, and then started a family, and so no longer do theater outside of teaching. And I'm excited to get involved on the other side of the grant writing table, and no longer doing all of those things. And excited to find a little bit more about where I live.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Morris. Does any of the board members have any questions? Well, I'll say thank you for wanting to step up and, volunteering your time for the Cultural Council. We appreciate, the enthusiasm. We're looking forward to seeing your participation. If there isn't any other questions or comments from the board, I can entertain a motion.
I move the board vote to appoint Daniel Morris to the Cultural Council for a term set to expire on June 30th, 2024.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion for appointment? Seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thanks, Dan. We appreciate it for coming out tonight. Thanks for waiting a little bit long to get the appointment, but best of luck to you, and thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right, so next up, we have a town administrator appointment here for DPW heavy truck driver, Mr. Broussard.
Yep, so I met with Kevin Gallagher and Paul Knoyer. We did a series of interviews. I think we interviewed 4 people and selected Mr. Farrier. Excuse me, not Farrier. I know a Farrier, Varier. And he was the best candidate. We think he's going to fit in just right. His effective start date will be April 12th.
Any questions from the board on the appointment? Seeing none, I can entertain a motion.
I move to affirm the appointment of Timothy Varier as DPW heavy truck driver.
Second.
Motion made and second on the affirmation of the appointment. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Mr. Frisbee?
Yeah.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Okay. Next up, you're welcome. Next up here, we have some new business. We have Ms. LaValle here, town clerk, to discuss the postponement, or I should say the delay of local elections. Ms. LaValle, do you want to take the floor and just kind of run by the rationale behind the request tonight and what you're seeking from us?
Sure. So I met with the Board of Registrars last week to update them that mid-March, we did receive word from the state that local towns have the authority to postpone their local elections, pretty much as the way we did last year. due to current events still. So this one is now Chapter 5 of the Acts of 2021. And pretty much everything is the same as it was last year, except it extends local elections through August 1st in order to postpone them. So also with this, I reached out to Jay just because there's a few things going on in town where school's starting back up. And obviously we utilize the gym as our polling locations at Millbury Street Elementary School and the middle school. But because of COVID, we were also extending the polling locations for 2 of the precincts in the lunch areas. So I reached out to Jay Cummings to ask if, being able to use the gym was going to, or the schools were still going to be able to do that. And he came back letting me know that with their new guidelines and spacing that the gym was not going to be available. So that prompted, obviously, me to think of a few things. And at the time it was, okay, maybe we can delay the election now that this has, gone through, and, wait till school is out. So I met with the board of registrars. We discussed it. We're kind of on board, but I said, I want to reach out to our wardens and everybody else that kind of has a piece in this just to make sure. And I get some mixed feelings on that, and, hearing them and thinking about it more. June 29th is what we were going to recommend, but, there was concerns about election worker availability. Obviously, it's closer to July. Those places get very, very warm. And some people were really concerned about delaying the election that late, which also, is a valid concern. And we were just thinking how we could also not impact voters as much too with, changing polling locations or, just different dates. And so I'm here just basically to discuss everything I did last time. And I mean, it's a lot, so I apologize now, but I figure we just need to get everything out there, see everybody's thoughts on it. I came up with 3 different scenarios, and that's, based off of talking with the registrars, the wardens, office staff, the school, Jay Cummings with the school, and pretty much everybody that has a piece in this. So are you ready for me to just kind of go on and explain what I have going on here? Are there any questions so far?
Keep going.
Okay. So I wrote a letter, and so basically what I wanted to discuss is there is still some concerns with exposure and risk. And then obviously the wardens had some concerns. So I have 3 suggestions for this. Obviously, the first is that we just have to move our polling locations. I brought it up with Evan as well a few weeks ago, and it was like mentioned to use the gym at the municipal center, which it can be done, but spacing wise in 5 precincts, we would definitely have less booths. We would have to limit how many people go in at a time. Then at one point I was thinking, maybe we could also use the South Grafton Community House, but I have never really been in there lately, so I don't know if it's equipped for us to go in there. But if we do any changing of a polling location, the board has to do this whole report on different scenarios of why we have to do it. And it's pretty extensive. I did reach out to the state to see if they had some examples, and I finally got one back yesterday. But there is more to that you'd have to do like a full-fledged report on why we have to move it and the impact it would have on voters. So that would be to keep the election date the same and just change the polling location. The second one was obviously changing the date to June 29th. And that would have less impact on the schools because they would be out. That would allow us to have the time to go in to set up, do what we need to do, and have all the areas that we've been having voting in there as well. And then the third one was May 22nd, which is a Saturday, and hopefully reducing hours. Now, the reason for that is May 22nd worked because then I looked at the school calendar, because setting up equipment, bringing equipment, we usually do it during the day, and we wouldn't be able to do that because obviously they're using the space. So that is a half day. So that Saturday would work, because in the afternoon on the 21st, we would be able to bring over the equipment, set up, and then on May 22nd, hold the election. I will say the reduced hours came because talking with staff, there's some concern that, again, we'd be working 7 full days and then, well, technically 2 weeks straight. And, you know, they were kind of like, you know, if we could reduce hours, that's going to prevent us from being there, you know, all day Saturday. As you know, we, after the polls close, they bring back the totals. Our office is still working there, and we usually end up there in the early mornings. So I did find out that around, there's other, I think, 30 communities, some that are much bigger than us, that are also already reducing their hours of local elections. The ballot is uncontested. There is a ballot question on there. And some towns, the other towns are due from like 8 to 6, 10 to 2, 10 to 4, 11 to 7, and 12 to 6. And the most popular time people are reducing their hours to are from 10 to 2. So that was a thought, you know, to also, you know, have the input from office staff on, you know, their perspective of doing this. So those are the 3 different things that I kind of came up with that doesn't really impact too much. Obviously, almost everybody is an incumbent that is on the ballot. The town moderator, there's a vacancy, so nobody's currently in there. And then Ed's seat is the only one that has somebody that pulled papers, which obviously is Ray. So Ed would be in that position until the election. So that's what I got so far. I have some other things, but I want to kind of stop there and see if anybody has any questions.
Ms. LaValle, it's true for library trustees. Basically, any elected position right now that would be up, they would still be in term, not just the ones that you mentioned, correct?
Correct. So that's, I think it's chapter 41, section 104, 107, that you'd stay in the position until, you know, the next person is qualified, whatever the case may be. But this case, most everybody's incumbent. So they're already in the position.
All right. I'm sorry, Ms. Roy, you had your hand up first, and then Ms. DeFazio.
So I have a couple questions about this Saturday. What hours were you thinking? First of all, not just what other people are doing, but what hours were you thinking?
I didn't really get that far because I wanted to kind of get a feel of what people were thinking. Obviously, one of the things is mailing voting is an option again. Because we have a charter question, we have to do our mailing again out to every household with voters. So we'll be able to include the mail-in ballot applications again. And most people have been opting to do that. So dependent on, you know, last time, I forget, I think it was what, 1,800 people we ended up getting to vote by mail for the June election. So you figure that was a popular way of voting. And then being uncontested, I don't think, you know, a full 13-hour day, or it's actually 12, but we work earlier than that, but 12-hour day. So I honestly didn't have an idea yet of the times I was looking for.
And my other question was, you mentioned that you guys will be working 7 full straight days, 2 weeks leading up. Why is that?
Well, how it works. So if we're doing Monday through Friday, then we have to work Saturday for the election. And as I mentioned, most of the time, by the time they do their counts, their totals, they come back to town hall. It's later in the night, and then our office still has to sit there and tally up stuff, do stuff. So we're there into the early mornings, which brings us to Sunday. So it's not a full day, but we're still working Sunday. And then you got to come back to work Monday through Friday. So that's what the staff was like, you know, that's a lot, you know. And so I'm just bringing that their concerns as well.
And there's no way to reduce the hours during the work week to help compensate that?
I was hoping, and I brought it up actually to Becca before, I think for September, I mentioned that most communities, the day after their elections, their clerk's office closed, just because you're still tallying, you have stuff. So that was another point I was going to bring up eventually, that if we do that, maybe even, you know, closing Monday after this election, which would be what, the 24th, I think. And, you know, we go in, we finish up, do what we got to do, and give us a half day, do something, I don't know, but just something where, you know, we're just not there working 2 straight weeks.
I'm sorry, Mr. Fazio, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, thank you. Candy, can you explain a little bit more? You kind of touched upon it with the mail-in ballots, but how would any of these scenarios affect or impact early voting?
What do you mean early voting?
Like mail-in voting or people who wanted to come in and do early voting?
So it's only mail-in option only. After talking with the board, there's not going to be any in-person hours. So they would get the ballots mailed to them basically the same way we did it last time. They fill out the form, they can mail it in, they can drop it off. We are open so they can hand deliver it to us right now. We mail out the ballot and then, you know, they can do the same thing. We have our drop box so it can get mailed back to us, it can get dropped off. And, you know, they can do that. So they have up until obviously the close of polls to do that. And I mean, we'd still have to go out and, you know, announce a lot of things and get information out there. So we could make that known, whether by, you know, a video, you know, we do with Bob, putting all the information that we usually do, website, whatnot. So that's what
okay. So if the, like, let's say, for example, the, we keep everything the same, when do the like, would the mailouts go out later, I guess is my question, if we chose a later date, you know, like what can residents expect with that? Is it a 30-day window? Do they get more time if we, you know, push the date out? That's kind of what I'm asking.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
No,
correct.
that's okay.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
So our everything would remain the same. So all your original deadlines stay the same. You're just moving the election date, and then the registration date would change from 20 days to 10 days before. So we can't order the ballots anyways until after the withdrawal deadline, which is April 15th, I believe it is, that Thursday. So I can't order the ballots until after 5 p.m. that day anyways, in case somebody decides to withdraw their name. So after that date, I can order ballots and we get them within a couple weeks. So that's why, you know, I'm hoping we decide something before then. We just put the new information on the ballot. If not, then they'd get printed with the original May date and we just send them out. And, you know, after we change the date, if we do, then they'd still be able to use those ballots. So the same deadline. So hopefully everything will be out by, you know, beginning of May, the latest, we'd start having the mail-in ones.
Okay, so thank you. So going off of that, I just want to say, I'm sort of feeling like what I'm hearing is all three of these dates sort of have an issue that goes along with them. And it's like picking the best case scenario. And the June 29th, I think personally is too close to a holiday weekend. Kids are out of school. People leave town for the summer. It's great that we're doing mail-in, but you know, we have a great voting record in this town. And you know, I personally, I don't want to sound insensitive to staff at all, but I also feel like, you know, this is the Super Bowl for you guys. Like, this is the time when you are, you know, we need you for town meeting, we need you for these elections. And, you know, is there some way to accommodate staff? You know, we could talk about that, or Evan can talk about that with staff. But I kind of feel like I want to keep things in place, and it's not to get rid of Mr. Prisby. It is to say that I feel like the May 22nd, the reduction of hours is not fair to the residents of the town. And there's a lot of people, particularly on Saturdays, who are going to have commitments with families. And I don't want a resident in this town to not feel like they had the opportunity to vote and wanted to vote. So I'm leaning toward, if we keep it the same, how do we support you and how do we support your staff? And, you know, moving polling locations is a pain in the neck. If there's any reports that we have to fill out, I'm willing to participate and help and support in those efforts of keeping that the same. So that's my opinion. 4 more people on this board who may have different opinions than that, but I'm leaning toward keeping everything the same.
Mr. Often.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would agree that I think logistically, the Saturday, the 22nd option might be the most palatable option for us. I think, the logistics of moving polling locations, the state report, aside, just communicating that, doing all the signage, getting the polling location set up, with all of the equipment and making sure that they're all staffed properly, and then thinking about how we're going to do spacing requirements with presumably something that would be a little bit less than we're typically accustomed to. I personally, I think that would be a lot more difficult than just changing the date. Like Mr. Fazio, I think I have some concerns about the reduced hours, and I would be interested in trying to see if we can address that staff concern with some type of time in lieu, or however Mr. Brassard wants to deal with it and work it through with you and staff. But if we're doing it on Saturday, people do have a lot of activities on Saturday. Typically, we have sports that are starting up, and people have pretty busy schedules this time of year anyways. My sort of overriding concern is to try to make it as accessible and convenient and well communicated as possible. And I think as soon as we flip into mid to late May, particularly after school stops, now you have families that are going on vacation. So I think the people's access to the polls and their ability to vote, they'll have that mail-in option. But I think that our best option is to try to keep it as close as we can to when it was originally scheduled, when people are familiar with voting happening, and in the locations where they're and hours that they're familiar with voting. So for me, that May 22nd option is the most of the three that you just proposed, is the most attractive.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the boards? Ms. Roy?
Just a comment. I agree. I'm leaning towards the Saturday for all of the same reasons. And reduced polling, it's not like we have an override on the ballot. I mean, I know there are still stores that do early shopping and people at high risk and concern. So I would want to keep maybe the earlier time, but do maybe like in 8 to 5. So you're reducing it a little bit, but nothing crazy. And it's still a significant part of the day on Saturday to get out and vote. And hopefully people do that.
Mr. Brisby?
Yeah, I'm the same way for a couple of reasons. Number one, I want me gone as much as Doreen does. And number two, we need we're going to need a town moderator to plan for June. Yeah. So the sooner we can get these things done, the better.
Okay. So, and I honestly can say my daughter does dance on Saturday, so it's going to impact me of finding someone to be with her for 3 hours and keeping her all day. But, this is an overall, there's just so many moving parts, so many different people involved that, you got to do whatever you got to do to make it happen. So I get it. There was a lot of, prep into figuring this out and trying to come up with something. I know not everybody's going to be happy, but, we just got to figure something out.
Ms. Lally, I have a question for you. And, I commented yet, so I think I too would lean towards the Saturday option as well with the rest of my board. I am also of the mindset of, not in favor of a reduced hour set, even though there really isn't anything contested on this. And, really the most significant change on here is a charter change, which I think should be, pretty straightforward from the town's perspective and moving the fire department forward. I would like to see, the earlier hours available, before people start their Saturdays. People also work, second, third shift, first shift, and so on and so forth. So I think to Ms. Roy's part, keeping that earlier part available, but maybe not so much, going all the way to, later in the evening, and maybe, at that 4 or 5 p.m. cutoff time. That way, you're not around all Saturday night tallying everything up, which, again, I think there's going to be, I think there's one question on that warrant that's going to need to be counted, right, really, at the end of the day. And I know I'm oversimplifying this, every vote counts, but yeah, I would lean towards Saturday. Definitely, have the earlier start time, but maybe cut the the ending time a little bit shorter. And
Okay.
I would defer to, you know, how you feel about what would work best, so.
But we also have to consider too, like if we get the mail-in ballots, we want to make sure they have enough time to process them as well. So, I mean, I think honestly, 8 to 5, 8 to 4 is reasonable. So I'm, you know, I'm okay with that. So, I mean, it's at a point where the board is the one that can change the hours. With this new legislation, it's either the select board, town council, or the registrars can postpone it. So, I mean, we kind of need your input on how you feel with hours. I mean, I didn't think we were going to vote tonight. I figured it was more a discussion and then kind of get everybody on the same page. So
we'll come back with us with some voting language, I guess, and we can, and I mean, at this point, we can, you know, do that on the April 20th, and that still gives you plenty of time for everything.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Board okay on board with that? No pun intended. Okay, great. We'll bring that back on the 20th. Thank you very much, Candy.
Thank you. Do you need me to stay on for the language, the next one?
Oh yeah, thank you. Yep, let's do that. So without further ado, let me just pull up my agenda. 1 second. So we have to vote here on the Strong Chief charter change ballot question. So Candy, do you want to just walk us through here tonight what we need to consider?
I'm not 100% prepared for this, but you have the language. I did not have that with me, but we obviously have this question going on the ballot for the local election. I reached out to Jeannie Kramer, our one of our legal counsel here, to draft up the language for it, and you just have to vote to add that question in the language for the ballot, so then we can add it to the ballot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions, Mr. Prasad? Did you want to add something before we get into discussion? Thank you.
Do you want me to read the ballot language?
Sure.
Or do you have that in front of you?
I can share it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm confused now. Am I reading it, or is just everybody reading it for themselves?
You can read it if you want. That's fine.
Okay. Shall the town approve the charter amendment proposed by Article 14 of the November 7, 2020 town meeting relative to changing the form of the Grafton Fire Department from a board of fire engineers to that of one headed by a strong chief, so-called, with the authority to appoint same to be vested in the select board and render the required text changes to the town charter and town bylaws as necessary.
All right. Any questions from the board on this language?
Can I ask a question of Candy? Candy, can we add explanation language to the question before this question is seen on the ballot?
So that's what the mailing that I sent you last week, we have to send to every household a summary, excuse me, in the wording. Yep. So it kind of explains that. You know, so I mean, we can talk about that this week if you want and figure out what you would like from that.
No, I was actually prompting you to mention that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just because it's confusing, you know, it's typical, you know, Massachusetts legalese. So as long as there's something that goes out to residents ahead of time that explains what exactly that means, I think that that's perfect. Thank you.
So, Mr. Prasad and Candy, I think in that, and I haven't seen the pamphlet, but my only suggestion would be to actually put the wording from the town meeting warrant in there, just so that people know what they voted on at town meeting and the specifics that are called out in it. Does the board have any other questions, discussion? Does the board wish to take a vote on this language tonight as presented? If so, I'll entertain a motion. Ms. Roy?
I move the board vote to approve the strong chief charter change ballot question language as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Mr. Frisbee? Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for sticking around, Candy. Have a great evening.
Wait, Candy, before you leave, can I just ask a quick question? Just to circle back to the election date, is that something we should consider voting on tonight, just to give you as much time as possible to prepare for any changes?
You can. I just didn't know, what the feelings were going to be. So I kind of mentioned to Joanne, well, let's get a feel of how everybody feels. But I think May 22nd is, a great option if you're okay with it, and the hours and, all that. Well, the warrant will be there. That's the warrant with the hours, but the date, then absolutely, if that will help you, and then it will help us, because then we can add that to the mailing too that we're going to send out with all the information.
Yeah. So Mr. Chair, if you're okay, I'd like to make a motion just to give her as much time as possible to deal with the information.
Well, I think with that motion, you're also going to mention times.
I am, and then we can amend it in discussion.
Does the board have any objection of going back on an agenda item tonight? I don't mind going on the 20th, but it's up to you.
No, I think we should.
Happy with that. I think we should move forward.
All right, Ms. Roy, if you want to make a motion on the previous agenda item.
I move the board vote to postpone the local election to Saturday, May 22nd, 2021, with reduced polling hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Just want to let you know that we did receive one piece of correspondence from Mr. Mead, also suggesting that we not go on the 29th, but just want to make sure we note that in the record. If there isn't any further discussion on the motion, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Mr. Frisbee?
Frisbee, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
All right, Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. All right, Candy, you don't have to come back on the 20th. There you go.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up here, we have Beth Galloway here, our director of our Grafton Public Library. Good evening, Ms. Galloway. Thank you for being so patient and waiting for this. I know anything library is exciting, so I want to give you the floor tonight and just ask what you're asking us for tonight.
Sure. First, can you hear me? Sometimes my mic, great. So it's National Library Week. It comes around every year, the second week of April, and it's a time to celebrate the role that libraries play in our community. So we started by celebrating school librarians on Sunday. Today is actual National Library Workers Day. And if you're wondering what the heck you pay me to do all day, I actually took to Twitter and on our library's Twitter stream talked about the things that I worked on today, book orders and policy and answering patron questions and that kind of thing. The 8th is National Library Advocacy Day. And we're gonna, we're always looking for money and support from our local, state, and federal government. So this is just a time to celebrate libraries. So to that end, excuse me, the American Library Association has a proclamation that they love for libraries to get to their local authoritative boards to sign off in and formally proclaim that April 4th through 10th is National Library Week and encourage local residents to go and visit their libraries. So we are still doing curbside pickup, no contact. People can call, email, or go through our request system with their library card to get materials. And we usually get them out within a 48-hour turnaround if it's something local. It's a little bit longer if it's coming from another library. This week only, to celebrate National Libraries Week, we are putting a word search, a coloring sheet, a bookmark, and a Grafton Library branded pen in everybody's curbside pickup bag. We're averaging around 700 bags a month, so over 100 a week that'll go out this week. And because we are still closed to the public, because we're not able to socially distance and do all the things that we need to do to allow the public back in for browsing in our temporary location, we'd like for you to encourage folks to go online to graftonlibrary.org and take advantage of everything from our passive programs that are celebrating National Poetry Month all month, our online story times, our teen advisory board meeting that's coming up, our community read, which has a, fittingly, library theme. The book is called The Giver of Stars, and it's about one of the mounted librarians out in the Old West who traveled on horseback to deliver books to patrons. So we're just celebrating all things library, and I wanted to get the board involved in that celebration. Since we can't invite everybody to come in person and celebrate and have cupcakes with us, we're finding ways to do that virtually and with some incentives. And just reminding the town that even though our doors are closed to the public, we are still here and we are still a presence, even while we're in temporary quarters and our construction project is trucking along. So that's what I'm looking for tonight. Proclamation.
So we have a proclamation in front of us tonight here. Do we want to read the proclamation or take a vote? What does the board wish to do? Ms. Roy, do you want to read the proclamation for us?
I had it ready just in case you asked.
Go for it.
All
you did
right.
such a great job reading earlier, Colleen. You're the go-to.
National Library Week 2021 proclamation. Whereas libraries of all types are at the heart of their cities, towns, schools, and campuses serving their communities. Whereas libraries are accessible and inclusive places that foster a sense of belonging and community. Whereas today's libraries and their services extend far beyond the four walls of our building, and everyone is welcome to use their resources. Whereas for people lacking broadband at home, libraries provide access to computers and Wi-Fi, even checking out internet hotspots and laptops. Whereas libraries strive to develop and maintain programs and collections that are as diverse as the population they serve and ensure equity of access for all, whereas libraries offer opportunities for everyone to explore new worlds and become their best selves through access to technology, multimedia content, and educational programs, whereas in times of crisis, libraries, librarians, and library workers play an invaluable role in supporting their community, both in person and virtually, whereas to adapt to our changing worlds, libraries are expanding their resources and continuing to meet the needs of their patrons. Whereas libraries are cornerstones of democracy, promoting the free exchange of information and ideas for all. Whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions for all members of the community, regardless of race, ethnicity, creed, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity, and socioeconomic status. Whereas libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate National Library Week. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Peter Carlson, Chair, proclaim proclaim National Library Week, April 4th through 10th, 2021. During this week, I encourage all residents to visit the Grafton Public Library online to access resources and serve. Because of you, libraries transform lives and communities. I almost changed it, Peter.
For the record, I fully concur.
You are welcome to edit or adapt that. It could say select board. Again, I use the boilerplate language from American Library Association.
All right. Does the board want to consider a motion?
I move the board vote to declare April 4th to April 10th, 2021 as National Library Week and encourage all residents to utilize the resources currently available at the Grafton Public Library.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Frisbee?
Frisbee, aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Thank you very much, Beth, for coming in tonight. Appreciate it. Anything we can do to support the libraries, please let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I do see that there is a library update further along on your agenda. I'm assuming you do not need me for that piece and it's something construction related.
It is. It's just something, a reminder that we've got a major construction project going on, and it's just a reminder for us to just keep up to date on anything.
Lest you forget, we do have Mass Board of Library Commissioners, 1 or 2 people coming for a tour tomorrow, and I will be asking them when we can get that next check. It should be next year, if not sooner. So, thank you so much. Have a great night, everyone, and stop in for curbside pickup. Text or call or email, and we'll have a bag out for you if you'd like a goodie bag.
Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too.
With the board's permission, I know there's only a few things on the agenda, but I want to take the open space and recreation plan out of order tonight. I know I've invited Mr. Robbins here tonight as someone who's familiar with the open space and recreation plan, and I know Mr. McGoldrick, who our town planner, is also here. But I just want to extend my appreciation for both of you for waiting. I know it's 9 p.m. It's late here on a Tuesday. But if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Robbins, Mr. McGoldrick, you guys are well versed in late meetings. So you should be no stranger to this situation. But well, I thank you very much and appreciate you coming out here tonight. So if you recall, in our last meeting, we had some questions around the recreation plan, and thought it'd be best to come back in here to have a more of a discussion around this item. I didn't know if Mr. Robbins, Mr. Goldrick, if you wanted to kick off a quick discussion, or if you want us to just go right into the select board questions from that last meeting.
Yeah, Peter, I have my PowerPoint teed up. If you'd like to go through that should answer a number of the questions. I know you know in the it was in the packet, so you've had a chance to read through it. But if you're at all interested, I can talk through that. I'll try to make it fairly quick. But
I'll share my screen.
I have that teed up.
Okay.
If you can give me permission to share my screen.
Oh, did you want me to do it or you? It's up to you.
Well, I'm prepared to do it, but since you've already got it on the screen, so next slide. So this is basically just a rough description of what the plan is, and I don't think any of you on the board now were on the board or otherwise in a position to be aware of this when we started this whole effort. But basically the purpose of the open space and recreation plan is to identify open space and recreation goals and objectives based on community input, and to come up with an action plan to achieve the goals and objectives. I will note that the scope is limited to open space and recreation. And while open space and recreation are included in the comprehensive master plan, that plan, of course, is rather out of date, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody who's going to hoping to update the master plan. But for now, it's important to note that this open space and recreation plan standalone is a requirement from the state. We have to have an approved open space and recreation plan in order to receive certain grants, and I've listed the ones I know of. The local acquisitions for natural diversity. We used to know that as self-help many years ago. There's a parkland acquisition and renovations for communities grant that we would be eligible for with this plan completed. Land and Water Conservation Fund, which we have used in the past, as we have the LAND. And finally, there is a conservation partnership grant that the town is involved with. It sort of goes to other organizations as well. But again, having an approved plan is a prerequisite for getting these grants. So if you move on to the next slide, we are updating the 2007 Open Space and Recreation Plan. And we actually started this effort all the way back in 2014. Doug Willardson, the assistant town administrator at the time, sort of organized this. We got that through as far as doing the community survey, and then it kind of stalled for various reasons, not all of which I can even remember at this point, but staff changes, lack of resources. So largely with the leadership of Joe Layden, our former town planner, we reinitiated this update effort in March of 2017. And again, due to all sorts of changes, which I'll mention again on the next slide, we finally got it. No, I'm not ready to move to the next slide, Pete. Sorry. I want to finish quickly going through the timeline. In May of last year, we submitted what we believe to be our final plan to the state, to the Division of Conservation Services in particular, and they came back in June and gave us conditional approval with a number of changes they asked us to make. And so we got to work on that. And finally, in February of this year, we have completed all the revisions, and we are now lining up to get it sent back into the state. But we're not quite there yet. So next slide gives you a little bit of a sense of who actually did the work on this plan. And the bottom line basically is this plan was written by us. our community through public input and representatives on the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee. That's important to note. This is the community's work. This is not the work of some far off third party who doesn't know Grafton. The committee includes representatives from the Select Board, Planning Board, Conservation, Recreation, and Grafton Land Trust, along with 2 at-large members. In addition, we had staff support, which was very essential from the Planning, Conservation, and Recreation departments, along with Central Mass Regional Planning, who did some of the work of actually putting the document together based on our input. But, and this is the reason why it's taken us so long, we've had nearly complete turnover of both the committee members and the staff. There is in fact only one committee member who was on the committee in 2014 who is still there, and that would happen to be yours truly as the planning board's rep to the committee. Of the committee members that started out in 2017, only 3 of us are still on the committee. Of the town staff who were around in 2017 and supported this project, only 1 of them is still here. And of the Central Mass Regional Planning staff who worked on this for us, none of them who started out working for us are still around. It's still, some of them are still on staff at CMRPC, but not currently working on this project. So it's a lot of people went into this. And there's been a lot of, with all the turnover, it's that kind of helps to explain why it took so long. Even the chair of the Open Space Recreation Plan Committee, of the committee appointed in 2017, the chair was Scott from Conservation Commission, and he left town, and the duties of chair fell upon me as the vice chair. So that's kind of where who did the work. The next slide, I'll talk very briefly about what the work was. There's a lot of background and context information, community profiles, demographics, a whole bunch of things. That was mainly taken from the 2007 plan and updated. Community setting, environmental inventory, the inventory of lands of conservation, recreation interest. So there's a lot of background and context information. A lot of that was sort of updated by staff. A very important part of this, of course, was identifying community goals. And we started that process with the goals and objectives from the previous plan. And we basically went out and did community surveys and forums, and got in part, we asked them, well, of these old goals and objectives, which ones do you think are still important, and which ones haven't we identified? So we did a couple of community surveys, I think 3 altogether, counting the one, at least 3 altogether, counting the one in 2014. And largely the survey results were fairly consistent from one year to the next, because a lot of people's perceptions of the open space and recreation needs and so on were fairly consistent, but there were of course some significant changes as well. But that's basically what we took as a starting point for then taking that public input and sitting down as a committee, working together to develop the goals, from the goals developing the objectives, and finally developing an action plan, all based on input from the community and from the boards that the various committee members represented. So the next slide just lists the goals, the 6 goals, and mentions that we have developed objectives for each goal and an action plan, action items for achieving each objective. The next several slides list the objectives for each goal, and I won't try to read through them. That would put you to sleep. But if you have, if you have any questions about those, we can sort of quickly look through those, and after these goals, so if you have any questions about them, of course, let's take them in a Q&A, and I'll spend as much time as I can to answer any questions. But after the let me bring that back, please, Pete.
Oh, yep. Thought we were ready for questions.
Sorry, Dave, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think the sum and substance of my entire questions on this have to do with the goals for land use, which I think are number 2, if you don't mind sliding up. There we go. Okay. First, Dave, I want to acknowledge the sheer amount of time that you guys put into this. This is sort of what can be kind of frustrating about local government. It moves at a glacial pace, and in part because there are so many checkpoints and so many cooks in the kitchen. And I have been there and understand it can be frustrating when you're trying to move something across the goal line, only to receive last minute conversation or last minute questions from somebody who hasn't been there for 10 years worth of conversation about this. So please be patient with me in my questions here, and I apologize.
I'm here to answer questions.
One of the questions I had was how the town is going to go about identifying, number 1, town-owned land that it wants to preserve for open space, and number 2, how it's going to go about identifying land that it considers visually appealing, culturally worthwhile, or historic. So I'll give you 2 for instances. Number 1, there is town-owned land right now that we just got from the town at 25 Worcester Street, which we're turning into affordable housing. Does this, I guess my first question is, does this set up a competing scenario whereby one group of people is going to say, well, we've got a master plan for open space and recreation that says we should protect all this town-owned land, and another master plan for housing that says, no, we should use town-owned land for housing? That's my first question. My second question is, again, along similar lines, what is the process that we're going to go through to identify what land, in particular land coming out of 61A, that might be visually, aesthetically appealing versus something that might not be so much so? And another, for instance, just came up with 59 Pleasant Street, which for the first time in the decade that I've been here, all of a sudden 59 Pleasant Street was this like really important piece of land to preserve. And I can think of many lots of open space areas that are used for farming now, which in a generation might not be, that are going to be much more appealing to preserve from a visual, a cultural, or an historic perspective. And the reason why I asked this question is because when I went back to the 2007 open space plan, that is, I admit now, really dated, it actually did a fair job of pointing out how you would go about making a determination about what would be something you would want to preserve as open space because it is aesthetically or historically important, and what might just otherwise be open space. That is garden variety open space. So I was wondering if you could, I know I just talked a lot right there, but if you could speak to those 2 things.
Yeah, well, I think sort of together, to a degree, this plan punts that particular question into the action items, whereas several of the action items say that the action is to prioritize, and part of that implies we'll figure out exactly how to prioritize, because at least implicitly we recognize that some lands are worth preserving, are more valuable as either open space or recreation land, or for some other purpose that is neither open space nor recreation. So some communities' open space and recreation plans go so far as to identify specific parcels or specific areas that were determined to be worthy of some form of preservation, protection, or dedication to particular use. We didn't do that. And in hindsight, I kind of wish the committee had done some more of that, but they didn't. And again, that's partly due just to the turnover, and as time drags out, people are more interested in just getting something done. But we did make a point of including in the action plan several action items that address the need to do that prioritization. And it leaves kind of open, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable having left it open this way, but that just means that we have to follow up on this plan by by organizing ourselves in some way to do that, because those are good points. What is an important visual resource? That's very subjective, and to get that done. And what this plan does anticipate is that to get these things done, we're going to get some people working together to do more than just wave our hands and say, well, we need to do this. This plan really, it does anticipate that we'll actually take some actions to organize ourselves to follow up on this plan and actually do the sort of prioritization that you're referring to, because this plan doesn't do that. And it doesn't really, in and of itself, it clearly identifies the need to do that, but it doesn't give a lot of guidance of how we're going to go about it.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I know you've been working on this a long time, and you've always been a straight shooter with me, so I appreciate the candid response. It's enough for me that we had the discussion, and it'll be noted in the minutes. And if it comes up again, we can refer back to it. So I'm good.
Yeah, and just for the sake of completeness, this presentation goes on after listing the goals and objectives. I did include some sample action items from each of the goals. I mean, obviously you can read the whole document, but as kind of an overview and get you a flavor of what the various sorts of action items that the plan embodies. I listed them here along with the plan identifies the groups: conservation, select board, planning, DPW, Grafton Land Trust, because they're very much involved in this as well. But we identify who we think the responsible parties are. But again, that ultimately goes to making it important that we follow up on this plan and not just put it on a shelf. That there are some things this plan says we should be doing. Looking back on the 2007 plan, a bunch of action items there. Some of them got done, the majority of them probably didn't. But I do want to focus on the last page of this presentation, just as this is our ask here, and this is where we're at. As I said, we completed our update of the plan in February. The plan is required to include letters of support from the planning board. The planning board voted back in June of last year to support it. From the select board, which is the only thing we're waiting for, and from CMRPC, they wrote their letter of support a year ago. So where we're at now is, before we can send this back to the state, we need that letter of support from the select board. And someone prepared this, the staff at Central Mass Regional Planning prepared a suggested letter of support, which is included in your packet. And you are, of course, free to deliberate on this, free to decide how you want to do it. But the bottom line is, if we don't get a letter of support from the select board, the plan is not complete, and we are not eligible for those grants I listed early on. So that's that bottom of that. That's my ask of the select board, is for this letter of support. Yesterday would be soon enough, but realistically, I mean, we don't have any pending grant applications waiting for the approval of this. My staff contact at CMRPC is anxious to wrap this up and send it in, because she's going off to work for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission in just a few days. And of course, someone else at CMRPC could pick it up and finish putting the document together and send it in. But this is basically where we're at. And again, if anybody on the board have any other questions about this, I'll answer them to the best of my ability now, and we'll see where it goes from there.
While we have here, Mr. Robbins, thank you very much. Can I stop sharing the screen? We can get back to the view here.
Yep, okay. I'm done talking from the screen.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for letting me be your presenter tonight for the slides, Dave.
You're still awake.
Mr. Roy, you had a question. You had your hand up. Thank you.
Mr. Robbins, is there anything additional you'd like to see in that letter of support, or does that letter meet what you think is?
That suggested letter, I think it was modeled after the typical letters of support that select boards provide. So I don't actually know where she got it, but I think I've seen similar. It's kind of a form letter, and the exact wording is not real particular. if it expresses the select board support, that's good enough in whatever language, whatever language you're comfortable with.
Ms. DeFazio?
Thanks. Dave, first of all, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to go through this evening, and especially since none of us have seen this from the start of it. And I just have a couple quick questions that you had touched upon. One, is this committee still active? It's just had a lot of turnover, but it's still active, correct?
The committee is still in existence. If I remember correctly, the charge of this committee was to complete the update of this plan, at which point this particular committee's mission would be considered complete.
Okay.
Now, among the action items are some which seem to anticipate that there will exist an open space and recreation committee of some kind, and that gets back to the question of how we follow through on some of the action items. And I suspect that the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee, as currently constituted, probably is tired of existing as it is, and would be happy to be dissolved. Perhaps some of the members of the committee would be interested in continuing and following up on the work in whatever form the town collectively decides to do.
That's great. You saw right where I was going with that. So if the committee is thinking of dissolving, and we should, perhaps look at another charge, because to your point of having it not sit on a shelf, right? We want to continue moving forward with this action, especially after all this hard work. And, as a board member, I'm sure my colleagues agree that in order to support this and move forward with the work that has to be done and support the planning department in this, that to me, that would be the next step, is to kind of look at the committee charge and, offer support that way, not just the vote tonight.
Yeah, I think, just to follow up on that thought, it has occurred to me to review the action plan to identify particular organized efforts that need to be undertaken. For example, we talked earlier about prioritizing land for various types of acquisition or protection. And that largely would seem to fall within the purview of the planning department, or the planning board, and the Conservation Commission, maybe some others. I started out saying it occurred to me to sort of review that action plan and make some recommendations to the select board as to whether it would be appropriate to create a new follow-up committee of some kind, or maybe more than one. I mean, there's always a sense of, well, let's just make another committee. And while I, to a point, enjoy working on committees and think committees can be useful, the committee to be useful, the committee really has to have a well-defined mission. We've had committees in the past that come and go, and sometimes they hang around with no real reason for hanging around. So we'd want to put some thought into how we organize the follow-up work to this plan. And I only have some very vague ideas at this point, but it had crossed my mind to review the action plan now that we've completed, and particularly if it's complete, then sort of once we've completely wrapped up this plan, then it's time to start thinking about how do we follow up on it.
So here's my thoughts on that, if I may add. I think, it might be too soon in an April workshop, but I'm thinking maybe bring this back in the May workshop, Dave, and for the rest of the board on the 18th. And we can have a discussion about, should the charge change, if there should be a new charge, and just get some input from the committee, and we can take some action items on that front. And maybe have a more fruitful discussion and development about how that would work effectively going forward, with a lot of the comments that Dave mentioned tonight that he made in response to even Ed's questions earlier. I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, because I think there's a lot more to this discussion, and I think it's important that we take action on the letter either tonight or on the 20th, and we get it drafted for for us to sign. But I think the next action, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but I do think that there's a lot more to discuss on how we could be more functional and keep that process moving. I was like, Mr. Often, you had your hand up with Ms. DeFazio.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess I'm happy to support this plan and the letter as proposed. I am ready to vote to support that letter tonight if the rest of the board is. I agree with Mr. Prisby. We in this plan, we have too many potentially competing goals. And it just puts us in a difficult situation without any kind of sense of prioritization. This board is going to have a difficult time, as it has already, assessing land acquisition opportunities, trying to balance the limited resources we have to make those acquisitions, knowing how much land is going to be available and continues to become available over time. It potentially puts us in a situation where resident input in the moment can have an outsized impact on our decision, and that's not a desirable place for us to be. If there is a way to get, as we think about that prioritization exercise, a fairly broad view on what those priorities should be, I think that would be really helpful. And, I'm thinking some public input, land trust, conservation, affordable housing, the open space committee, if that, whatever form it's in at the moment, we really want a clear sense of direction to sort of guide our decision making. And I don't think that this plan as it is necessarily does a great job at that. So I do think there's some follow-up conversation that needs to happen to try to make that particular piece come to fruition.
Yeah, I agree. Ms. DeFazio, did you have another question?
Mr. Often covered a lot of what I was going to say, so thank you. But I also just wanted to ask too, Dave, do you remember you mentioned surveys, that you did surveys, and to Matt's point too, it would be great to get some community input on this. And as I'm very familiar and sensitive to doing big long projects, usually in sustainability, that sits on shelves and collects dust. And it's the worst. And I take them off, brush them off, and say, well, how do we move forward? And it's usually a staff issue of, shortage of staff and time. And so that's why I would like to see a committee charge be, moved along from what it was last time, make this an active committee again to support the planning department. And also in the sense of public input, if we had some kind of, survey plan also to start to collect the next phase of questions from residents of what they're thinking and what they'd like to see. I think it's 9:30. Could very easily for me turn into a workshop discussion right now. So I'll stop it. But again, thank you for your work. And I feel like this is the starting point where I completely support tonight voting on getting these grants taken care of and supporting this as it is. But I really want to see this continue to move and not just sit on a shelf and not put the board in a position where we're still asking questions.
Yeah, let me just follow up to some of those thoughts. First of all, I think the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee, their job was to update the plan, and that's essentially complete now. I think going forward, if there's a need for anything, there's probably a need for some sort of an open space and recreation committee, not a plan committee, but more of an implementation committee, perhaps you could call it. But I'm not sure that that's totally appropriate because I haven't really thought that through. But there's certainly a lot of follow-up work, particularly when it comes to the land use. And this also feeds into or ties into our desire to update the master plan. And I think it might turn out that we can sort of leverage that if we can kick off a master plan update effort, because that's really the place where you can take the most comprehensive look at everything in town at the land use, the potential land use in town. And that's the context within which you can balance some of the competing needs. In one sort of, it's kind of a detail, but it's important to recognize that just when we talk about prioritizing land, particularly prioritizing potential land acquisitions for the town, a complicating factor is that a lot of the land that we might ultimately be interested in is Chapter 61 land. And we don't know when that's going to come out of chapter. It may stay in chapter for another 50 years or more, or it may come out next year. And so prioritizing with that in mind, you might have a particular piece of chapter land that looks very important. We'd love to get our hands on it for either open space or recreation or other municipal uses, even affordable housing. There's also a lot of possibility. I mean, chapter land, you tend to think of it as more than likely it's potential open space, but it doesn't have to be. But in any case, the difficulty in thinking about that is you don't know when it's going to become available, but still you need to plan as best you can. So there's a fair amount of thought that has to go into that. And one of the things that a follow-up committee's work may well be involved is digging into that whole, that whole thing and really focusing on that. And yeah, we could talk about it all night tonight.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how long my voice would last, but
I've got
for a while yet.
I've got some great takeaway items here tonight for us, Dave, to follow up on the 18th in May. I think that's a good time.
That would be good.
But I want to move ahead and ask the board tonight on the one big ask, and I know that we postponed it for this meeting, is do we have a motion, letter in support of the 2020 Open Space and Recreation Plan that the board would like to consider?
I move the
Chair.
board vote to.
Go ahead, Colleen. I was doing the same thing.
Oh.
I move the board vote to submit a letter of support for the Open Space and Recreation Plan as presented.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion? Just officially, if we could just update the draft letter to reflect that of Grafton, obviously. And are we authorizing the chair to sign this, or we use the whole board need to sign this letter?
Let's authorize the chair.
I just want to make sure we have that cleared up. Okay.
Yeah.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio?
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often?
Often aye.
Ms. Roy?
Roy, aye.
Mr. Prisby?
Prisby, aye.
Peter Carlson, I declare the motion carried. Dave, thank you for coming in. Mr. McGoldrick, thank you for coming in. I'm going to follow up with Mr. Broussard on on the workshop on the 18th. We'll start developing a framework for this discussion, and we'll carry forward. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And as soon as you get that letter officially printed and signed, I guess you can send it through Chris, and Chris will forward it up to
I will go down
maybe to get it incorporated.
As soon as I hear it signed, I will go down and sign it with blue ink and get it out the door. Okay.
Thank you.
And then we can consider our work truly complete, finally.
Thanks, Dave.
And next week, we'll start planning our next round of updates to this, and hopefully, because this is due for another update in 7 years. So we'll need to make sure we get started on that in plenty of time.
Gotcha. All right, sir. Thanks for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you for waiting. So be patient with us. All right, next up, let's go back to select board reports and TA reports. I just, for select board reports, I put in fire chief search committee. Just want to let the committee know I'll be organizing the committee tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Just walking them through the charge and everything. And once they're organized, I'm out, and they're going to run with what we've asked them to do. Other than that, I don't personally have any other select board member reports. Does anyone have anything that they want to add? Mr. Fazio and then Mr. Often.
Just a clarification, Mr. Chair. I think the meeting tomorrow is at 7 p.m., not 6.
6? I'm sorry. Yep, 7 p.m.
7. Okay.
Thank you. Yep. Mr. Often?
Are we on to correspondence?
No, we're on select board. Oh, I'm on select board member reports right now. So we're going back to the top of the.
I'll hold off.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any? Okay, moving on to TA reports. Mr. Broussard, do you have an update for us?
Yeah, just real quick, library is obviously still coming along. We're starting to work with Annie DeShane on phone system and a couple other things to try to get a little closer to that final piece. We're working on things that are collaborative between the library and town to make sure that we have consistent systems in both and don't have things that don't jive. Lastly, sidewalk update. We do have a number of bids out right now, and Will's been working on that. So we do have some positive motion, and I think we'll start seeing some actual results here shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. Any questions for Mr. Broussard? All right, moving on to correspondence. Ms. Roy.
So I just wanted to call attention to the correspondence I received from the chair of the EDC about their potential support of increasing the number of cannabis licenses. And in it, he mentions that him and John Allen were in support of that, but they weren't sure about how to sponsor a warrant article. So I didn't know. I know they were supposed to be in recently, but they couldn't make it in time. Is there any way that we can help offer them that support to help make the warrant article happen?
So one of two ways I know that the select board can help. Obviously, 10 signatures will do it. It'll get it on the warrant, but the select board can reserve a spot as part of our purview. We can put a spot on the warrant for such language. If that's something that we're getting asked to do, we can instruct Mr. Broussard tonight to put a spot on the warrant for EDC to draft warrant language, and they don't have to go out and get the 10 signatures.
Yeah, I think holding a spot for them would be a good idea, because the next time they're meeting, it looks like, is April 13th with us. They're doing a workshop with us. So we should be able to talk about it more at that time.
Okay. And what's the deadline that we have to get I should know the answer to this because I should have it running in my head, but what's the deadline that we actually have to have the warrant language completed?
So resident petitions have to be in by the 21st. We have some leeway in that, but the 21st of April.
But that's for resident petitions. This will be a select board petition.
Right. Sorry, I don't have my calendar open here.
So if the meeting's on the 5th of June.
Yep. So you come back 45 days from there, but sorry, I just. Is select board to sign warrants is May 11th.
Okay, so we have to have that all, whatever language they want to propose, right, for EDC, we need to on it before then. Yep. Okay. Any other questions or concerns from the board on that? We're going to be discussing that with them next week. All right, Mr. Often, did you have something under correspondence you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight Mr. Yeoman's letter to the board in recognition of Katrina Koshevos for stepping up during COVID and obviously a bit of a staff shortage to do payroll. That was something that I think was pretty challenging. And I also just want to recognize all of the staff for all of the stepping up that they've all done. We've had a lot of, during COVID and during we've had a lot of, fair amount of staff churn over the last year, and everybody just kind of got on with things and did what they needed to do and stepped up to try to help the town out. So I just wanted to recognize that publicly and thank Katrina.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Often. Katrina, I did hear, has stepped up, and not only was she working part-time in the zoning office, she was also assisting ZBA and also performing payroll functions for the entire town. And I do agree that goes a long way. And if there's something that this board can do to even extend its further appreciation, I'm sure I can work with Mr. Broussard on that and we can figure something out, but I would agree. She deserves a lot of gratitude, as with many other employees in Grafton who work for us, for the town. Any other questions on correspondence from the board? Well, I think that's it. I want to thank everyone. That was a lot tonight. It's a late one here, but we got a lot done. I want to appreciate everyone's patience going through all of the motions tonight. And don't forget, we do have a workshop next Tuesday for 7 p.m. And at this point, I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio,
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Often,
Often aye.
Mr. Frisbee,
Frisbee, aye.
Ms. Roy,
Roy, aye.
Peter Carlson, aye. I declare the motion carried. We are adjourned. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you very much.